Hey guys, we are back. Whoa, I'm getting a lot of noise. What's going on here? Okay, I'm Tom. I'm your ghost host. I don't know what's going on, but I'm getting a lot of noise.
You want me to
Everybody,
mute?
let's see. Yeah, what happened there? I was getting a lot of wind noise for some reason. Is there airplane taking off? That just happened. I'm Tom, your ghost host. This is Strange Journeys. Lynn happened to pop in just as the intro started. I don't know what's going on there. Boy, that's a lot of noise. Um, got my beautiful wife Lynn down there, and John and Andrea over there. We're going to be talking to them today about the Grave Hunter Society. And Lynn just got back from taking the youngest to McDonald's, the youngest grandson. So, all right. Are y'all ready to get started today? All right, just remember that we offer these shows first and foremost for your entertainment. Those of you that are watching now and watching the playback later, we're not by any means and do not claim to be scholars or experts in any of the topics that we cover. We're simply enthusiasts and storytellers who like to have fun with these topics while respecting individual beliefs. And also remember that as we are a live stream, nothing is rehearsed, and I don't even go back and edit it out later. If you were watching the last show, there was 3 or 4 minutes. It was just silence because I don't know what happened. We just lost it there for a minute. All right. As we get into the show, ET facts. We start off. Tim Shepard, who was with us last week, we're going to be talking about his show in just a minute here, put up the question, what's something that you've come across in your research that's interesting that people might not know about? But I kind of added a twist to it and said, what's a rabbit trail that you've encountered while researching one subject that just caught you off guard? Lynn, do you have anything you want to share there? Lynn, can you hear us? You're muted.
I was trying to find my unmute button.
Okay.
There was a lot of stuff about the fairies that I found interesting. To pinpoint one and say this is what caught my mind, I can't really do that.
Well, I was just talking about maybe a rabbit trail that you come across that you weren't expecting.
Okay.
I
didn't do the research. I just read and listened and ran my mouth.
All right, John, Andrea. Now, I don't want you talking about stuff that we're going to be talking about later in the show.
Whoa.
Well, then we got nothing to say.
Oh, okay.
No. For me, a lot of times when I start doing like genealogy research, I will come across somebody that isn't even related. And then I will just start going through their family tree and their history. And I start telling him like it's my cousin that and I'm like, did you know, and it's completely unrelated to anything that I'm doing research on. But I can really get, I guess, nosy into just a random, like if we're out doing research and trying to find headstones, just a random headstone that's next to the person. Like, well, that person looks interesting. I wonder how they died and where they lived and who they knew. And so that's usually how I go with it. Like one of our main guys, I found out that his neighbor passed away from typhoid fever. He was a 23-year-old NCR worker, was newly married, died in his home that's still lived in and rented out today in Dayton. So, it's just one thing after another for me.
For us, that question is more, what's not a rabbit trail?
Yeah.
We have to draw a line somewhere. She'll send me all kinds of information about people, and I'll file it as we'll get to this eventually.
Well, when I was training the tour guides back when in that other company, we'll talk about it. That's where I met Andrea, and I would I would tell them, focus on the tour, focus on the items that you're talking about there. You're going to hit rabbit trails in your research, and just file them away for later. And then you can come back and spend all the time you want on it. But in my research for that tour, there were, and without giving it away, I'm going to say there was one subject that to me was taboo, because in that company, for some reason, they wanted to add this subject to every single tour, no matter where it was located. And I just refused to have that story on our tour. Until one night on tour, somebody asked Lynn why we hadn't talked about this subject. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second.
I think I know what we think we
know. Have you figured it out?
I think so.
There was this young lady in Mobile, Alabama. Her name was Florence Elizabeth Chandler. She was born in 1862. Her father was a former mayor of Mobile and a banker in Mobile, had passed away, and her mother remarried some kind of German soldier or something, a cavalry officer in the German army. So they hop a ship to travel to England. On the way, Florrie, as they called her, meets this man named James Maybrick. She's 18, he's 42. Well, they hit it off, and by the time they get to England, he has proposed, and here's Florrie. He has proposed, and they get married soon after. This was where Florrie was raised, on the main street in Mobile, Alabama. Wouldn't you like to live in that house?
Seriously.
It's a parking lot now.
It literally is a parking lot. It's sickening. There is a piece. There's like a 4 or 5 foot section of one of those columns left on the sidewalk there, and that's all that's left of the building. Well, anyway, here's James. By the time they got to England, like I said, he had proposed. They got married in Liverpool sometime after. It turned out to be a rocky and tumultuous thing. There were infidelities on both sides. And after a few years, James Maybrick ends up dead. They say it's from arsenic poisoning. And Florrie is accused of his murder. She is tried and sentenced to hang. She was actually the very first American to ever be sentenced to the gallows in England. And needless to say, she didn't go there. I mean, she didn't go. They finally rescinded that sentence and sent her to a prison for life, which supposedly they looked at the case again and released her after 14 years. But she was never able to regain. I mean, she was a Southern belle from the word go, and used to the high life. And by the time she got out of prison, she had nothing, moved back to the States, and died alone with her cats in a little house in Connecticut. Now, interesting thing about that, the only thing in her belongings was an old family Bible, and found inside the pages was a recipe for removing arsenic from flypaper. She declared her innocence all the way to the end. But in re-looking at the case over the years, they find out he didn't have enough arsenic in his system to kill him, so they're not really sure. I'm getting that wind noise again. What's going on? Anyway. It's you guys. Oh, no. All right. Well, anyway, here's the unique thing. That story is interesting in itself, as she died alone and broke. But it turns out that her husband, James Maybrick, was one of the top I'm going to show you something. The top suspects thought to be Jack the Ripper. And this is if you see the screen there, this is a list of Jack the Ripper suspects. And there's Mr. Maybrick right there in the midst of them all. And that's the story that I wouldn't have anything to do with on our tours, because every tour in the company had a Jack the Ripper story, and I wouldn't do it. I said, I'm not doing a Jack the Ripper story. And then a Jack the Ripper story gets laid in my lap. It was a connection to Mobile, and a little Mobile girl may have been the one that took out Jack the Ripper. Who knew? But that's my rabbit trail story, because I wasn't researching Jack the Ripper at all.
Yeah, the guy that asked me about it said that some of the bricks from her house was his driveway. He had a brick driveway, and some of those bricks were some of the ones from her house.
And he was like, why don't y'all talk about this? And I said, I'm not talking about Jack the Ripper. But I did then.
When you had something to say.
We took Jack the Ripper out of ours also, because it was a kind of a.
It was a stretch.
Yeah. It was kind of hokey, and so I wanted to make it more personal.
Well, that's like the Lizzie Borden story. I know in Washington they had a Lizzie Borden story on the tour there, because they passed an antique store that sold antique beds like the one her father's body was found on. What kind of connection? I thought, no. Speaking of Lizzie Borden, I just thought about this. In a few months, I think it's in May, I'd have to go back and check the calendar, but we have a woman who was the house psychic for the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast. She was the house psychic for 10 years. She's going to be our special guest, and we'll have a Lizzie Borden show. Nothing but Lizzie Borden with the woman that was house psychic there for 10 years. That's coming up in a few months.
What she has to say.
Oh, yeah. I just finished her book.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, she goes through the actual murder and what, events leading up to it and after it. And then she also includes throughout the book things that they've experienced investigating there. So that's really unique. All right, guys, as we head into the show, we want you to remember, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and sign up for notifications. And if you can help us out on Patreon, we would certainly appreciate it. All right, and if you can go to our Strange Journeys Live, you can get to Patreon there. There's a link over on the side that you'll see that P, the pink Patreon P, and click on that. You can help us out for as little as $3 a month, and every little bit helps. We want to keep doing this, folks. My renewal for StreamYard comes up next month, and we just have to make a decision if we're going to keep doing this this way or not. We're not sure yet, but we'll see. And we will let you know. Just go to strangejourneys.live and there also click on the Strange Journeys merch, and it'll take you to all of our stuff there. And remember, if you go to our merch page, and you can get 15% off of everything in the store by using SJ15. But remember, if you're watching, remember what we call you? You are the watchers. And we got some shirts of it. Oh, that cut out a lot of the sound, whatever happened just then. I don't know what that was, but you are the watchers, and we appreciate you watching. So go over there and check that out. Let me get rid of this and get back over here. All right. On our last show, we had E.T. Tim Shepard with Prairie Ghost and Return to the Prairie. And any feedback, Lynn? Anything you remember from that show that stuck out to you? You're muted again.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to find it.
We've been doing this almost a year now, so you should.
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't like your mouse. Now he's had a lot of interesting stuff to say. Like I said, to put my finger on one thing and say this is what caught my mind, my attention. I really can't do that, but it really was an interesting show, and anybody that hadn't seen it needs to go back and watch it.
Yeah, Tim has a ton of stories. I mean, he's probably can put out a third book, which he's working on his third book now, but it's the Quetzal Raiders. But one story that I just think is amazing. I love all the stories, but the Stoll, Kansas story, where this anthropologist, I think it was back in the I can't even remember now when it was. This anthropologist wrote this article citing supposedly some articles from the 50s that turned out to be erroneous, saying that the devil would show up in Stoll, Kansas every October 31st on Halloween. And he presented it in such a way that it was factual. And so people started showing up there every year, but it turns out it was just an anthropological experiment. None of that was true. So, and the fact that people keep showing up, I'm still getting a lot of noise. Guys, is there?
Sorry. We're thinking it might be the other computer's fan. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, well, we can't keep you muted. Okay. All right. But anyway, if you haven't seen that show, go back and watch it. And guys, it's time for the strange sightings. This week's strange sightings. Let me see what y'all think about this. Okay, what do you think? Is that somebody's little play toy?
That's what I thought at first, but then the legs was moving.
Yeah. Some unknown cryptid at this point. Hey, let's do it this way. Turn the volume down. Let me skip ahead to the actual. Yeah, this guy posted it. There's no description, nothing but the title, no date, no details, no nothing about where or what this might be. But it seems to be coming out from under that big rock.
Great. Now I'm going to have to get one for Andrea.
I want one. It's so cute.
It might get big.
Yeah, they might grow.
That's
Looks like its mouth is open.
I'll get a leash for it. It's so cute.
I mean, it does look like the legs. I mean, who knows?
It looks like the little dragon that was on Mulan, the cartoon. The Eddie Murphy dragon.
Yeah.
It's about the same size.
What do you think? I mean, could that be real?
Plastic would not do that. It would have to be, if it's a toy, it has to be something other than plastic, because it wouldn't just wiggle if you pulled the string. It wouldn't wiggle its legs and its back end and that kind of stuff.
I really want it to be real because I really want one. But
I don't think it's something physical for sure. It could be CGI, some computer graphics. It's fairly sophisticated if it is, but the lighting around the head seems a little bit.
It is brighter.
Possibly inconsistent with the way that something like that would look. It
could be at an angle, like how it swims.
So I've seen quite a few snakes in the water that you would expect to move around that same way.
Yeah.
And typically...
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, so where you have it paused right now, of course, I'm pointing at the screen like you can see where I'm pointing. Right over here.
Yeah.
The head seems a little bit more separated from the background. And I mean, that could be happening in real life, but one of the best ways to probably do this would be to look at the actual reflections in the wavelets as they come over. You would expect them to be reflecting a little bit of the yellow from the creature. Either way, if it is
he has a
CGI,
background in graphic design.
If it is CGI, it's really well done. It's not poorly done at all.
I'm convinced. Like I said, I want it to be real because I want one now. I'm going to go to every pet store and be like, do you have a yellow dragon?
Yeah.
I have to find the video now and contact them and ask how much they want.
Yeah.
Exactly. Did you catch it?
Yeah. Cool. Right. But like I said, it's unusual to me in that they put nothing on it, no descriptors at all. There was nothing on the description about when the video was shot, what they thought it might be, anything like that. And it only had 15 views when I found it.
That's odd.
A video like that you would think would be going viral in no time. So,
well, it could be that some kid had found it or whatever and videoed it and put it up on YouTube, and it had just gone up when you found it.
I've been up there since March 25th. So that, a week.
Yeah.
Almost. So anyway, that one just going into the Strange Sightings files. Remember that Strange Sightings files are only available on Patreon after the show. I upload them there. So if you want to see all of our other Strange Sightings files videos, they are on Patreon. And you can join for as little as $3 a month. Well, guys, we had set aside a day to talk about John and Andrea's Grave Hunter Society. So let's dive on into that. And yes, we are talking today about the Grave Hunter Society. Do you like your little intro?
I do. Can we use it on our website? Seriously, I was telling him, I was like, you're talented. You got a gift. You can really put those together. They're awesome.
Well, thank you. Christine's with us. Hey, Christine.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello. All right. Well, before we get into talking about the Grave Hunter Society, we'll give you a little synopsis right here. All right. The Grave Hunter Society was established in 2020 by Andrea and Jonathan Batteas after years of specialized experience in freelance historical research. They needed a place to bring together the different facets of their love of the exploration into the intriguing and unknown. And you can find all the information about them at gravehuntersociety.com. All right. I'm still getting noise. It comes and goes. I don't know that's weird. That's strange. I don't know what's up with that. Let's see here. All right. Andrea grew up with a love. I'm reading this from their website, folks. This is what they got on their website. Andrea grew up with a love for all things old and vintage, especially if it had a story attached to it. That love eventually became a passion that led her to volunteer for several local historical societies. There, she was able to learn and research about the day-to-day lives of those from our past. Andrea broadened her research abilities in 2014 when she was asked by a nationwide tour company to write and run a walking haunted history tour for the city of Dayton, Ohio. After the success of those tours, she went on to research and facilitate tours in cooperation with Ghost Hunting Source and Miami Valley Paranormal Services locations in Springfield, Ohio, including the Robertson Building and the State Theater. It was through these tours that her love of urban exploration and investigation into the long-forgotten buildings of the past began to take shape. The tours allowed her to become acquainted with paranormal spirit encounter investigations, which Al has been on the show before, and he may show up. He usually just pops in every now and then, so hopefully he'll show up here in a minute. I'm getting him back to the show in a few months to talk about some more ghost hunting stuff. Okay, Andrea completed in-depth research for the team for many locations that included difficult-to-find information, such as original landowners, deaths or on the on or near the property, county histories, and individual biographical sketches. With the gift of discernment and intuition, she has the uncanny sense of knowing just where to look for information. She continues her research into anything interesting that comes across her desk. And Jonathan fell in love with research at a young age when he was told the story of a family treasure buried away in the distant past. This began his voracious appetite for maps of all kinds. As he grew older and started to integrate new technologies into his research and saw an explosion in information he was able to find, he consistently uses his expertise as a software and research engineer for the University of Dayton Research Institute to create custom tools and processes to increase his efficiency as a fact finder. From geographical information systems, or GIS, digital forensics and image analysis, optical character recognition, OCR, text extraction, and sentiment analysis to bulk data acquisition and automated analysis. How do you say all that? Jonathan applies computerized techniques to be as thorough and accurate as possible in his findings. And Jonathan, I'm just going to venture out and say Andrea wrote that for you, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. I had to ask her what it all meant.
I'm sure. Basically, it's saying you guys are qualified for what you're doing. And that's what it's all about. And I met Andrea through this former national tour company that we've mentioned on the show a couple of times. And she was leading a tour in Dayton. I was leading the tour in Mobile. And we both eventually kind of moved up in the company, I guess you'd say. That's what I was picking at Tim about last week. I was like, what happened to you? You just stayed in Topeka and kept doing your tours. Well, we just went on to bigger and brighter things with the company. So that's where we met, and she was teamed with Debbie Standifer, and they made the dynamic duo. Leading those tours. They had it's amazing. I've stayed friends with some of the folks who had some of the most popular and busiest tours in that company, and like I said, we're still friends to this day. And I know she used her research there. She even helped me at times to train other tour guides. But she was also, weren't you kind of a regional manager of sorts? I know you did the company newsletter.
I did the company newsletter. I was offered regional manager, but at the time, because I was balancing the 2 tours, the newsletter, and helping training, I said, you have to pass that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't.
Okay. All right. So just give us a little bit on what prompted you guys doing the Grave Hunter Society.
Well, it had kind of been bubbling in the background for a while, since it's everything that we, enjoy doing. We ended up doing this kind of stuff in our downtime anyway. And then I guess technically it was COVID and all of the lockdowns that came into place.
Right.
And I was saying, we have all this time on our hands now. What better to do with it than to start researching some of these things that had come to us in the past.
Right.
And Andrea already had a few things kind of laying in the background that she had just happened upon in our everyday, excursions. Like
You can't see it that well. I'll try to take a picture of it and post it for later.
German baptismal that she found tucked away in a corner in an old antique store.
On my birthday.
On her birthday.
Big 4-0.
And just kind of how that one piece led to, the first 3 or 4 things that we really started investigating. I'll let you talk about it if you want to.
So I was kind of telling Tom about it before the show started. It was my birthday. He took me out and he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, let's go antiquing, because I'm a girl and I like that stuff. And so since he's a great husband, he took me. And we were in the back of this antique store where there's kind of like a warehouse where they take a bunch of houses that are being torn down in the greater Dayton area, and they try to reclaim bits and pieces of it. You can go buy a staircase, that's 100 years old. So in the corner of the store were just pallets and broken mirrors and empty frames and torn pictures. And for whatever reason, I wanted to go through that. Like, that's what piqued my interest in this whole awesome warehouse. And I come across this. And the first thing that stood out to me was that it was clearly a baby's, that this was somebody's baby a long time ago. And I'm a mommy. And so I was drawn to it. And it was in German, and I have a strong German bloodline heritage.
Okay.
I couldn't read it, but what sold me on it was the little boy, his name, or the child, was Hermann Gustav Adolf Dürer. And he was born on September 9th, 1897 in Dayton, Ohio. And my mom was born on December 9th, 19 something in Dayton, Ohio. Mom, if you're watching, that was for you. So immediately I had to have it, and it didn't have a price tag on it, which means it was kind of not really for sale yet. And I told John, I said, well, maybe and I'll offer 5. And technically, the cashier is not allowed to barter. She technically is supposed to keep things that are not priced and say, just call back and we'll see if we can sell it to you later. And she said, 5 sounds great. Happy birthday. And I got my baptismal certificate, and that started a journey of posting the best I could get of pictures and things like that, and trying to get somebody to help me looking into books to help translate it to find out exactly what it is. And not only did we find out that it was a baptismal, who his parents were, but we also found where he was buried.
Wow.
And that he's a World War II veteran, and that his grave is not recognized for that. And that's something that we are currently in the process of doing for him.
Cool.
So I got really attached. So that's how things start.
Excellent. All right, we just had one of our regular viewers show up, Greg. Hey, Greg. He says, hello, everyone. I hope you have plans to keep the show on. Well, we're planning on it, Greg. I thank you. And John and Andrea, I don't know if you realize this, but he's kind of a neighbor. We found out in our Bridges of Sorrows show that he's from Cleveland.
Cool.
So there you go, Greg. All right, Greg, hang around. We got some stories from these guys coming up. So they're going to tell us about some of the stuff they've come across. I just want to say I'm going to try something today after the show. Never done this before, but I was just looking around on our Facebook group the other day, Strange Friends, and they do these rooms that's like a video chat. So after the show, whoever's available, we're going to open up a room for all the strange friends, and we're going to rehash the show today.
Okay.
And see if anybody has any questions, comments, and things like that.
Yes,
and,
I do.
Yeah. Well, you can ask them here. And like Greg, if you have any comments, please comment while we're going on the show. Type them in there and let us know you're watching, and let us know where you're watching from. We want to know where you're at. Like I said, we gave a shout out to Greg. He's from Cleveland. All right. Where did the name the Grave Hunter Society come from? How did you come up with that?
Our kids, they named us. So going from Herman Deer, that started, that was in October of 2019. Comes 2020, we're now in the lockdown. And you're allowed to go outside for nature walks, and that's about it. And so a lot of people like geocaching. Our family likes to go gravestone hunting. So we go on Find a Grave and look for local graveyards and request for those graveyards for photographs of loved ones. And we'll go searching. And we found Herman Deer's uncle, Charles Deer, who actually was a Dayton's 1893 murder sensation. His story is a really sad one. It doesn't have a happy ending, really. But he had a headstone request, and that kind of started it. He's in a very old part of Woodland Cemetery in Arboretum, which is located in downtown Dayton. The Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, and their sister and father and mother are buried there also. Wow. And he's in the original part, which in the 50s and 60s, Dayton didn't really take care of, Woodland Cemetery didn't really take care of their grounds very well. And some of them were washed or knocked over, vandalized. And Charles' headstone was one of them. So it took a lot of extensive research and a lot of time to find his headstone and exhume it and clean it off. And by the time we were done, we were just on cloud 9 with this. And the kids were really involved. I mean, they were there. They were with us every step of the way. They were very patient, and they loved it. And we said, we should do this all the time, but we need a name. And they came up with the Grave Hunter Society. They named us, so that's how we got the name. Long story. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, it has a Victorian slant to it with the society stuck on there, you know, and so I mean, my first thought was Victorian, you know. Then you got the grill work on your logo and all. It's kind of a Victorian vibe to it.
For me, they brought up the name, and immediately I'm thinking visually, and so I thought, oh, hunters, okay, I can turn the U upside down, make that a headstone, and we're good to go. We're golden.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, well, that'll work. We have to stick with that. You know?
That's cool. I didn't, well, crap, I didn't load. I got the logo up there in the top right-hand corner, but I forgot to load it in as an overlay, so. Okay.
It's okay. It's kind of overlaid up there.
Yeah, it's up there. What are some of the? Just give me an overview of what are some of the different things you do in the Grave Hunter Society.
You talk about that.
Well, some of the things, so we'll split this one down because it's actually we share a lot of the responsibilities, but then we each have like our own niches in this. Genealogy and ancestry research. We love to do home and location research, finding basically the ancestry of your house and who lived there. It can answer a lot of questions, and it can kind of make it feel even more homey. And we also do unknown antiques and
There it is.
knickknacks, where people aren't really sure what something is, what it's used for, and we'll try to sometimes hunt that down for them. We also do a little bit of paranormal investigation, where we get a lot of videos and recordings, and we will process those through analytics, and that's really where he comes in. And we don't want to say that we're debunkers. We don't want to. But our desire is to be able to come up with a rational reason for them, something that will bring them more of a peace of mind. Because I've noticed that a lot of times with like paranormal investigation, people will go into a home, stir everything up, do some research that it sounds kind of spooky on a house, and then leaves the family to live there for the rest of their life, or they can move. And so, we want to kind of bring a peace of mind and reassurance that, it could be residual energy. It could be, I don't necessarily have I'm trying to think of the right word, there's been times where we've kind of said, this could be, a poltergeist, or it could be demonic, I mean, we're able to kind of rule some of the things out for people.
Right.
So I know in the past, we've done a lot of the historical research for paranormal groups before they go into places. That gives them a good place to start, a good place to look. Understanding the history of a place at least helps them to understand what kind of things they might be looking for. I know for us, we tend to collect data about, even when people send us videos and things like that, what we like to do is just get a clear picture of what do all of the signs indicate we're seeing in this picture. Something that we can explain, or is it something that we can't explain? And if it's something we can't explain, we don't come down definitively on it and say, okay, this is definitely a ghost. We say, okay, here's everything we looked at, and we don't have an easy answer for it. This might be something. And so that's where we come down as far as that goes.
Yeah, there's a podcast that I listened to, and I mentioned it on the show before. They were investigating the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas, and they got this EVP. And on one episode of their investigation there, they've been talking to different experts about the EVP, and it was just unique to hear the scientific side of things, of that EVP being analyzed. Well, you were saying that on the video, did you want to share that video now?
Yeah, so we can do that. one of the things we do is we do take a look at videos. People send us things, or sometimes we find things on social media that are asking for help.
Right.
And if something jumps straight out to us, then we like to take a look at it. For instance,
This
one of
was
these here, we
actually in Cleveland.
Yes, we actually have this video in Cleveland where this woman walks out, and as you can see, she comes to the door, and then a few minutes after she leaves,
You'll see a figure appear
you see
in the door.
this door here.
Is it gonna play?
It does. It's playing. It just goes slowly. You see it move off screen like this.
Yeah. You see somebody walk by.
And of course,
That's what it looks like.
that's very creepy.
And they were
to see
scared to
that.
death. They were terrified.
But if you look at this reflection that I have blown up here, and you notice that it is synchronized with what's going on here, you can see that there's actually a chain link fence with what looks like a towel or a sheet laying over it, and that is reflecting into the other doorway, so that as they move, they're both moving at the same time and in synchrony, so that they come off screen. So really what you're seeing is not an entity moving off screen. It's the reflection of that towel over the chain link fence. And it's just little things like that that you miss unless you go frame by frame over each one of these things, and you start in the upper left hand corner and look all the way down at all the reflections.
Right.
And you can scrub back and forth on the video, and those things really help to kind of bring clarity to some of these things.
So in the middle there, you had a blow up of a window that was on the left, right?
That's correct.
In the reflection in that.
Yep.
I thought that was just CSI, where they looked into the eyeballs and got a reflection and identified somebody.
No, I mean it's not quite like CSI, but there's some similarities. Some of the other things we do, of course, is we do the analysis of imagery, so we can look at what's called the EXIF data, or the metadata that's associated with images. We can also look at, I don't want to get super technical, but some people might find it interesting, with JPEGs, which most images that cameras create are JPEGs. There are different compression algorithms that they use to create those JPEGs, and it leaves a fingerprint in those JPEGs that are called quantization tables. And certain quantization tables match different manufacturers. And so if you have somebody who comes in and says, hey, I took this with my Fujifilm X11 camera or whatever, and you can look at that JPEG and the quantization table is different, then you can know right off the bat that it's been edited at some point. It's not a known table. And so little things like that, where you can look into images, you can say, okay, well, I can't say 100% that this is authentic, but at the same time, if you go, hey, look, everything matches up the way it should, then that's helpful.
Most of us will never even know stuff like that, John. I mean,
well, this is, and then we create full forensic reports of that with chain of custody of the digital, and create a report of everything that's found.
Wow.
One of the other things that we're kind of venturing into, so as the Grave Hunter Society, we find headstones. That's primarily where our interest lies, is in finding headstones.
We really recovering them.
Yeah, and if you look at here, I'm going to
cleaning them, just making them look nice again.
We had talked about Charles Durr as one of the headstones, and as you can see, we found his headstone. It was actually under about 6 inches of dirt in a section of the cemetery that is, 100 years old. Who knows?
Now, what made you think to dig down 6 inches?
Yeah. Yep. We had to. We
really had to look for him.
We had to look for the plot. We had to
section number, plot number, his neighbor.
Oh, okay.
We couldn't.
Of course, there were no headstones up.
No.
So we just had to kind of guess. And then probe a little bit here and there until we found it. And we found the headstone, pulled it up, took images of it, And so that's him. That's Carl. That's Charles Durr. And as you can see here, this is something that we wouldn't have known had we not found it. So in the obituary and in all of the newspaper articles, they called him Charles Durr or Carl Durr, but they spelled it with a C. And here it's spelled with a K, the more Germanic way of spelling the name. But
Right.
His whole headstone's German.
Yeah, so
even his death and birth with its Keb incest. So
Yeah.
it's they were very, very German.
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat. But as we
Cool.
move forward, one of the things that we are working on is in doing so taking multiple photos around headstones and using what's called photogrammetry to take multiple pictures. And as you can see here off on the right, all of these pictures are kind of tied together, and they create a three-dimensional mesh
Right.
of the headstone, which that can then be cleaned up and made into a three-dimensional model of that headstone that would include all of the details as if you were standing there in front of the headstone. However, it's a three-dimensional object, so that you could load that up on your computer and go all the way around that to view
Nice.
all the different angles and to get all of the details and elements on that headstone. So it's just a new way of easily preserving like your ancestors' headstones from all angles, not just that one
Cool.
angle you're used to seeing.
Is
That's
that
a-
one of the original Daleks, or is that a beehive on the top of it?
That is a beehive, and it actually stands for the Ladies of the Maccabees, which was another secret society, just like the the Order of Odd Fellows and
Mhm.
things like that. So that was the Lady of Maccabees. So it's a very ornate headstone, and for
But
the
she
life
was-
of me, I cannot remember who's on there.
She,
Is it Beckel?
she was asking if it was a Dalek.
Yeah,
What?
I don't know if you're Doctor Who fans, but it kind of reminded me of the Daleks.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a beehive.
it's a beehive.
Oh, cool.
That or a very, very forward-thinking person from the 1800s.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And you have some more pictures of the headstones that you've gotten?
No, I think that's it. Did you want to talk about Henrietta?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about Charles Deere and why it was so important to us. And we're actually in the process of trying to put all of the information, the whole story together. We called the county clerk of courts, got the court records, which are not very legible. We have dug through everything that we can. This was, he was murdered by 3 ruffian young boys. He was 41 years old, I believe, at the time. He was walking home at night. We estimated it was about 1:30 in the morning with his wife, his oldest son, Charles, and their baby in a carriage. And she was also pregnant at the time. They were leaving his brother Frank's house for a birthday party. And they had walked, I guessed it was probably about 1.5 miles, how far they had walked. And they were literally 2-3 houses from their home. They were getting ready to cross over a ditch, and it was called Seeley's Ditch, which was just basically like a sewage ditch.
Yeah.
And they were in the process, the city was in the process of lining it, bricking it, and putting a bridge over it. And there was 3 ruffians at the entrance of the ditch in this little tiny piece of wood that they needed to cross. And Charles Deere asked if they would please move out of the way so that Matilda, his wife, and son and baby carriage could get across. Some slurs were exchanged at Charles, and they got into a knock down, drag out kind of fight, a push and shove fight, and Charles was stabbed, I think a total of 3 times. And he died in front of his wife and son and little baby. They had 7 children in total. When you read the story that came out the next day, it talks about the demure, pitiful, tiny wife, Matilda, of Charles Deere, and that she was with child and that she was so grieved, and how well loved Charles Deere was. And he was very well loved. Over, I think it was, they ended up catching the boys, putting them in the jailhouse, and I think it was over 2,000 men appeared. Most of them were stonemasons, because Charles Deere was also a stonemason, at the fairgrounds, and they wanted to lynch the murderers.
Wow.
And they were talked down. They were told, let's not do anything irrational, boys. But really, justice was never served. All 3 boys, some of them, they served a short jail time in jail. 2 of them kind of gloated about what they had done. And they got out of jail and lived normal lives, got married, and had their own families.
Wow.
So is there anything to add to that?
No, and then at some point everyone forgot the story, and his gravesite slowly got covered over the years, and
His story made it into the New York Times. We found it in Canadian newspapers. It was really a sensation. It was a devastating blow to the Dayton community. He was a very, very loved man, and it's just a real shame. Where his house stood is now a parking lot area of Miami Valley Hospital, but you can still see where Seeley's Ditch was and the street that it ran off of, and you can see where his brother Franklin, his house used to be. Their son Charles grew up to be a baker, and you can see and find where his little baking shop used to be in South Park of Dayton. And so it's just kind of neat to branch out and see like where they kind of went out. That's my rabbit hole. See, I start following the family. What happened to all of them? Where did they go? What house did they live in? Is the house still there? Can I still go see it? You know, can I get in it?
my rabbit trails follow the maps, because I love maps. So I had to find Seeley's Ditch on a map somewhere. I had to find out where this place, where it was, what it was. And that's where I find out that Seeley's Ditch, apparently Seeley was an old mayor who had sanctioned the digging of this canal, which was later termed Seeley's Folly and then Seeley's Ditch. Yeah, because it was
a stinky sewage ditch.
It was a nasty little sewage ditch right next to the houses. So, yeah.
So that was his claim to fame.
Yeah. That was my rabbit hole.
All right. What are the requirements? I'm getting a loop here again. What are you looking for when someone brings something to you? What are the requirements? Somebody needing the Grave Hunter Society.
You kind of cover it all. So it just kind of depends on what they are interested in. If they're looking for ancestry, are they wanting a family tree? And I'm going to need a few names to go by. Let's start with your parents and then your grandparents, and let's see how far back we can go with your knowledge, and then I'll just start plugging away with what I can find. And if it's house ancestry, we just need an address, and we go all the way into. Well, he really does. He's a lot better at it. He'll dig into Sanborn maps, and those are so interesting if they are available, and anything that we can find. And we've gone back to maps that date all the way back to 1790s, looking for homes and areas, plots and lots. That's what we say. If it's a trinket or an antique that they need researched, we just need to see it, a description of maybe where they think they found it.
Right.
And we'll do our best for them. Photographs, we just need a few names. We've been really good. We've been able to just with a little bit of detail, find a lot of information on photographs and where they were taken and a good time frame of when they were taken, and do this is what it looks like now, and this is what it looked like then.
Right.
Which I think is really fun. I love antique photography. And then with the paranormal, we will do whatever we can. We have a few paranormal actual groups that will go and investigate if that's something that they want. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily jump into the investigation part. We don't want to go in and stir things up more than, what might be going on. But I can tell you that in all the cases that we've had contact us, everybody wants a ghost and not a lot of people end up with them. So we do a lot more reassuring that everything is, the coast is clear. So
Right.
Yeah. As far as requirements go for what we will take on and what we won't, really, we're at this point, we are not for profit. We work on like a value for value type basis. If we give you value, we would hope that you would return that value to us. And in that way, we're not, this isn't our full-time job. And so if someone comes to us and says, hey, I have this thing that I'd like you to look into, but I really need the answer tomorrow. That, as far as that goes is, well, we can see what we can do for you until tomorrow, but
and we've had that happen, and we've been very successful.
Yeah.
So
this is true. But I guess just understanding that things like this take time, and the further back you go, the harder it is to find some of these things that unfortunately disappear forever sometimes. And so there may not be an answer to some questions.
Okay, so if somebody came to you and said, I'm looking for somebody and I need some help. My grandmother she was a Bradford. She was the last in her line from William Bradford. When they came over, they had the family money, his brothers, his kid, his wife, the whole bunch. One of his brothers, it is reported, took all the family money and left for Texas. They don't know if he ever made it, if something happened to him, but I would like to know, I would like to see William's headstone. I would like to know where he's at. Did they send him back to Bradford, England to bury him? Is he here? I would like to know kind of that story. How would you go about doing, would that be more in depth than what you do?
No. That actually sounds like a really fun rabbit hole that I'd like to go down. I would just start with the basics first. I would take all the names that you just gave me, as much of the story as I can have from you. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I would go to is probably find a grave. It's just really easy. Type in and look and see what I can find. And it's worldwide. Mm-hmm. And see where that takes me. Right. Set that aside after I'm done with that. Go to Ancestry, kind of go through a little bit of that. And then I would honestly start going through newspapers and archives and looking to see what I can find and start making connections. And you would be surprised what's public knowledge, and what was public knowledge from all the way back then as well. And so it's pretty fascinating what you can find. And really, honestly, like, people get really upset when they read things in the newspaper or they hear things on the news today. But going back into the 1700s, 1800s, and early 1900s, man, newspapers were really descriptive. And sometimes way too far. So you can get a lot of detail.
Too sensational.
If
it bleeds, it leads, right?
And so you get a lot of information, because not only are they going to talk about what they saw, they're going to ask the neighbors and the neighbors' neighbors and the person that lived behind them. And, so you get a lot of information.
I mean, you kind of laid out a step there as far as genealogy. When you get say, like that video you showed a while ago, what are your first steps in going through that? How do you get started on
for a
breaking
video?
that down? Yeah.
I take the address and I start looking on house and home research. you go ahead. And
For the video itself, typically what I do is I'll watch it just from beginning to end about 20 or 30 times. And each time I'll be looking at different aspects of it. The first time through, I just want to get an overall impression of what's going on. Second time through, I look for movement within the video, and I typically like to see if movement is consistent amongst all of that. Sometimes you'll get like wind movement, or with the video that we watched earlier, you'll see movement with water. Water has a little bit of weight to it, so you'd want to make sure that the movement of the body of the creature is consistent with the movement of the fluid and how the fluid is moving. Then what I'll actually do is I'll start watching for shadow play to make sure that lighting seems to be consistent. I want to make sure that as light is hitting different subjects, that it's illuminating it consistently. I want to make sure that if there's a reflection of light on things, that it's actually taking some of the color of the different subjects and putting that on different surfaces.
Wow,
the way that normal things interact on video. And then I'll slow it down and I'll start looking at individual like pixel variations. I'll zoom in, I'll zoom out. I'll see if I can, enhance CSI stuff. I'll see if I can enhance different things. One of the biggest things with movements is looking for it. So this is totally non-scientific, but if you kind of let your eyes go blurry looking at a video and you just see as things are moving, you'll see coincidental movement a lot easier. So if something's moving over here and something's moving over here at the same time and the same kind of speed, you'll see it a little bit easier if you're not focusing on the image itself, but just focusing on the movement of pixels. And so that's where you can really see, hey, this thing over here is moving about the same time and speed as this. They might be the same thing, or one might be a reflection or something like that.
Wow.
And then last of all, if you with some of the older images, it's easier, but you can actually freeze some of the frames of different videos and apply some of the same techniques that you would use for still images to see whether, so there's another technique called error level analysis that's used on still images. So a JPEG is a compressed photo, okay? And so the different compression algorithms mean that if you have 10 pixels in an area and all 10 of them are different colors, the way it compresses it is it goes, okay, here's an average of all 10 of those colors, and I'm going to compress that into a single color. And that way it is how it compresses. And so certain artifacts remain consistent throughout a single way of compressing, but when you have two different images that were compressed differently, layered on top of each other, those show up differently when you use some of these techniques to see, and it'll show edges and things like that wherever.
Like if something's photoshopped.
Yeah, exactly. And these kind of things are not 100% either, but they give a really clear indication of, you can see, oh, hey, somebody edited the titles on that book, or somebody added something in. So,
yeah, that makes sense, because you've seen that before, and you're like, because most of us can see when it has been faked, so, but the really good fake artists out there, you need to do what you're talking about and break it all down and bring it apart so that you can see. I mean, but the thing about the different pixels and all being different, that makes sense to me. I can't explain it as good as you do, but it makes sense to me. What's some of the strange stuff, weird things that you've come across since you've been doing this?
Somebody gifted us a grave marker, like an antique grave marker.
Wow. Here, you'll want this.
It's pretty much like that. Thanks, but that was actually really interesting. I know I shared it with you guys on just our private chat, that the location that we ended up finding, the I think it was the patent number and the serial number, and that specific grave marker was actually just old 10 grave marker was used in the northern part of Kentucky, and we kind of zeroed it in because of we could barely make out the city on the little tag. It's where the Hatfields and McCoys. It was where the McCoys were buried. So it was just wow, like that was really, they had no clue what they were really giving us. So that was one of the weirdest things. We get strange stuff all the time, or pick up weird stuff. Where people go, here, this is weird. Do you want this? It's, yeah, I'll take it.
Well, in your research and your discovery there, what have you come across that's just out there strange?
Our research and our discovery. So one of the first things we ever started researching was we were actually doing a little amateur paranormal investigating back in 2014, and we were in Waynesville, and we were at the Axe Murder House. I know I talked about it early on the show, a few episodes back, and the house is now just an old stucco house. It's not the original house, but it's where the axe murder took place in 1879 on August 20th, and 3 women were murdered by a young man. He bludgeoned and axed them to death. Wow. And they were found 5 days later. So that's kind of the background. After the house was cleaned to the best of its ability, they were never really able to keep anybody in the home. They would say that strange smells would, kind of pop up out of nowhere. There would be cold spots, sounds, whisperings, crying. I mean, people only lasted in this old house a year, maybe 2. Yeah. So conveniently, the house burnt down in the 1950s. It burnt down, and they rebuilt on top of the land, just this anathema of a blue stucco house, ranch style, amongst all these old Victorian homes. And nobody would still stay in it. The ground was cursed, they say. So there's a company there that's been there now for 6 years. I'm impressed. Kudos to them. But while we were taking pictures of the house at night, just kind of goofing off, we got a really interesting photograph of this, ectoplasmic thing that's up in the corner. So where did this lead us in our strange research? So we thought, there's the picture of what we photographed. It absolutely has not been altered in any state. We have not enhanced it. Take your best guess at what it is. I researched St. Elmo's fire.
I said smoking.
No, but it was not cold enough to cause steam that was not coming out of the fireplace. If you actually look where the chimney is versus where that's climbing up onto the house.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I remember saying, okay, I'm going to take your picture.
It looks like it's interacting with the downspout.
Yeah. I said, okay, I'm going to take your picture. And that's what I got. So, but going further into researching Waynesville, I was like, I wonder if they because it's kind of a haunted town. There's not a house there that's not haunted. I wonder what else they had going on before this or after this. And we came across some really interesting stories. But my favorite one was there was a doctor that there's one cemetery there. And this doctor decided to exhume bodies in the middle of the night to do research on them. And then he would put them back into the ground about a week later. He would do it at night, unbeknownst to anybody in the town. He was never sure if he put them in the right grave. And so there's people just hodgepodged everywhere in their main cemetery of the older graves. And that was around 1890 or so. And then not too long after that, where Waynesville is located, it's next to what's called Caesar's Creek, which was one of FDR's great plans, which was to turn a creek into a dam. And before that, it used to be an old town. Caesar's Creek was actually a creek and not a lake and dam. And in that lake was found in 1894, I think, at the time, I believe, I don't think it's changed, the world's largest freshwater pearl that Tiffany and Company in New York City actually purchased for a large sum of money, millions today, from this guy that found it. He just kind of fished it out of the creek. So those are two just weird little things that we came across.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. Is there anything that you have not been able to figure out? You hit a brick wall and couldn't come up with some kind of definitive answer.
Well, I have one. So I got into this because my family has a treasure story. They have a story about treasure in some faraway Texas town. And they told me all about it, and I have dug and dug and dug and dug as much as I can into this, and
He's done an amazing job.
Dead end, absolute dead end. I've gone as far as to find digitized copies of every single deed from the county clerk's office.
Wow.
Automate the extraction of the text from that so that it would draw the metes and bounds for each one of these plots on a map. I have over 700 plots drawn on a map, and I can't make heads or tails of anywhere. So,
or I mean,
Explain.
do you
why.
feel like? I mean, do you feel like there actually is a treasure, or you can't prove that there's not? Well, I mean, where are you at?
So, They say to be cautious with family stories because they are just they're stories. I think I have a name and I have documentation that shows that there is a large amount of money, not as much as I was told.
Wow.
But that there was a large amount of money involved in this individual. And that, just like the story said, he died under very mysterious circumstances, and that's as far as I can go with absolute surety. I can say there's an individual, and according to county documentation and deeds and things like that, he had a lot of money.
Okay.
And this was around the early 1900s, where they didn't have a lot of money in banks. So they had it in the bank of backyard.
Right.
Shoved in the mattress.
Yeah, there could be a possibility, but could be a Walmart built on top of it now. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, but you've basically confirmed with some kind of certainty that there was a lump sum of money hidden, stashed somewhere.
Yes. And where that is, I can't say for sure because I hit that brick wall. And the further away you get from 100 years ago, the harder it is to find, circumstantial evidence and things like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, good luck on that one. I hope there'll be some weird clue pop up from some unknown place. Somebody on TV will say something that sparks something, and you'll be off on a new trail.
I just like the validation. If somebody else wants to find it and send me an email, that'd be great.
Well, I'll send my daughter. She lives in Texas. I'll send her to go dig it up, and then she'll split it with you.
All right. Well, that's a better deal than I'll get from anyone else.
That's right. All right, Andrea, have you had something you've come up against?
You answer all your questions. You never have any answers.
I usually go, that's good enough. No, I'm satisfied. No,
okay.
No, not really. I haven't. There's been a couple when I do research for paranormal teams, and I'm trying to get information on when it's out of my location and I'm working in another state or another city. Right. Sometimes it can get really frustrating for me. I almost feel like, I understand, like I'll watch things on Animal Planet and they'll talk about like scent dogs looking for certain things and how they get frustrated if they don't find, the reward at the end. And, I can kind of relate with that. But I sometimes I'll run into dead ends at other cities, but it's usually because I'm taking my research too far and not really stopping where I need to. But I've been pretty successful. I have to, so far, so good. I have been
Okay.
pretty lucky. So,
All right. Before we go on, how much can you talk about the investigation you were in with Darren Huff?
lots.
Darren Huff was on one of our ghost hunting shows talking about the gadgets and tools. You tell us about how all that the invite came about and what it was all about.
So Darren Huff owns and runs ghosthuntingsource.com, and he is the head and lead investigator of Miami Valley Paranormal Services, and a documentarist pair group.
Yeah, documentarians.
There we go. From Cincinnati, they are called Cincy Stories. They worked at the time exclusively with PBS. They contacted Darren and said, we'd love to be able to follow Miami Valley Paranormal Services around and kind of get a day in your life, what it's like to, meet with the people, what you have to do to prepare for an investigation, what you do during an investigation, how you go over the research afterwards, everybody who's intimately involved. And what Cincy Story really does is it gets involved in the individual. So when you watch like Ghost Adventurers or, I don't know, any paranormal show on television, it talks more about the client. Well, what this really got more into was the team.
Why paranormal
what makes us
investigators do what they do.
And Darren contacted us and asked if we would like to be the head researchers for the show. Wow. And we jumped on it. We were like, absolutely. So we met with them, and I think he downloaded some pictures. Did you get any pictures down, Jonathan?
The only one I have is the FLIR.
The FLIR. So I'll post that one in a second. So we met and with our first group meeting, and we were told 2 houses that we needed to research on. No, not yet. I see it though. 2 houses that we needed to research on, and one was in Harmony Township, Ohio, which was literally don't blink or you'll miss it. It was this big, which is really interesting how much information I was able to find, because the town was so small that I felt like it was more necessary to research the ground and the home that was a possibility to be researched. And not only was it one of the first homes built, it was built in 1887. It is now a bookstore called Familiar Books and the Metaphysical. So she's really into that kind of stuff. So we went there, researched, and then another one that we ended up actually going with was called the Dunker House. That's what we chose to call it. We can't really call it what it's commonly known as around here. It is in West Alexandria. I can say that. It was built in 1850s by, I have the name actually, John and Anna Markey. And they were of the Dunker religion. And that was something that I learned. I always knew about like Amish and Quakers. Mm-hmm. Dunker was a thing also. And they were big into, they were abolitionists. They did not participate in the Civil War because they did not believe in war, but they participated in the Underground Railroad and harbored a lot of runaway slaves coming through Ohio. Later on, it was transferred into the Habakus family in the early 1900s. One death and all this time occurred. This was my favorite. I mean, the death is sad. His name was Casper Habakus. He died in 1958. He was 86 years old. Casper. So if there was a ghost there, it was Casper, the friendly ghost. So I thought that was pretty fun. After we gave them our research at our next meeting, and they filmed us going through the information and also going through some of the new investigative tools. There's a guy named Tim that works on the team, and he builds all of his equipment from scratch.
Jim, I think.
Jim. It is Jim. I apologize if you watch this. It's Jim. And he builds. What did he have?
He had Echo boxes and
Wow.
SLS.
All from scratch.
Yep.
Like just from the bottom up, he built them all. Then we went on location and filmed. Before we went on location, Cincy Stories actually picked John and I, Darren as the lead investigator, and the medium, Michelle, and they went to our house and interviewed us. They were with us for about an hour and a half, interviewing, kind of talking like how we're talking now. And then a few days later, we went on location, or I think maybe even that night.
Yeah,
It was pretty quick. We went on location and we were there and did investigating. My hand was touched, and I caught a photograph at that time of an orb, like several in a row, going away from me. We were I came across an casket card, an old casket card. And I read some names off. I read some names that I researched. I know that there was a widow's peak. There's a widow peak on this here. If you want to show the FLIR of the house, this was taken with our FLIR. So if you look at the peak, behind it is actually a higher peak. It doesn't quite get it. It's definitely an old mansion. In the widow peak was engraved in there was Isadora Marquis France, born here 1860.
Wow.
She was one of the daughters of the original owners. I read a lot of the names off, and we didn't really get very many responses. You can go ahead and take this one down if you'd like. We didn't get very many responses on the spirit box. What do you think?
Yeah.
No, but we did leave a little early, little ones that we had to come home to. But
Yeah.
it was fun.
We have youngins, so.
It was fun to really be a part of that, and it's always nice when we're able to investigate a location and then be invited along. Not necessarily to
Participate,
but just to see the location and say, oh, I know about this, or this person's name that's engraved here, I know who that is. Or
I have a passion for tangible history. That's why I really love researching homes and thinking of the different types of personalities that live there, just the fashions and how that has changed. We're going from Victorian era to today. If you look at women, it's just changed so greatly. Everything, decor, craftsmanship is just not the same anymore. And so we do really enjoy just going and
that's
looking at everything.
So they don't know when that show is going to air yet? 'Cause I think it was supposed to originally come out in April, right?
It was supposed to come out in April. They have since Cincy Stories has also joined with, I think, Me TV.
Mm-hmm.
And they are doing kind of a spin-off with it. So I think we've been put on a delay. I'm kind of hoping maybe it's not like you didn't make it through editing, but more
Right.
wait until October, September, October.
We're not on the cutting room floor, but
that you know of yet.
But there was
what happened.
There was a lot of, obviously there was other people investigating with the team being there, and we did go over evidence at a later date with Cincy Stories there, and you'll have to watch this show to see everything that we caught.
Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye out and hopefully be announcing that when it'll be available. Well, what's next on the horizon for the Grave Hunter Society?
I am currently putting together all of the research of the Deer family, mainly the murder case mystery, and I'd like to put together kind of he's so forgotten, and I'd like to put together a little book about him, and then kind of just branch off with some other forgotten stories of people that are in that cemetery that aren't necessarily famous.
Yeah.
But everybody has a story. Not everyone wants to be famous,
right?
But no one wants to be forgotten. And there are a lot of forgotten people there. And so I want to kind of put together a book of, those people whose family they're also gone. So nobody visits them. Nobody thinks of them. I want to bring them back.
Well, that would be awesome. Well, keep us informed of how that goes. All right. How does somebody contact you? They want to use your services.
Andrea
What's the best way?
at thegravehuntersociety.com or Jonathan at thegravehuntersociety.com.
There's your website.
Yep.
Thegravehunterssociety.com.
Yes.
Remember, there's 2 S's.
Yes.
That's correct.
When I did the
Yes,
first,
you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. I'm pretty active with Instagram, actually. I have had more success with
I think,
reaching out to people
Yeah.
through that. So if you can also contact us on that, and I'm always quick to respond.
I put all your contact info on the description on both videos on Facebook and YouTube. If not, I'll go back and put it on there. I was trying to remember to do that, so I think I did. But if it's not on there, I'll go back and correct that now. All right, closing thoughts, Andrea.
Closing thoughts. Thoughts on what we
Just the
do.
show today.
Oh, I don't know. You're blank.
That's unusual.
I know, right? If you have, yeah, I know. There's my thought. Big blank bubble. If you have any research that you want us to do or a story that you want us to find of your ancestors or friends, let us know. We'd be more than happy to work with you. And we're pretty flexible and we're pretty successful. So we definitely live by our motto. Not everyone wants to be famous, but no one wants to be forgotten. So we're here to help bring back people. So.
My final thought is I'm going to take a look at that dragon video again.
There
and,
you go.
If I'm convinced it's real, I'm going to find out where I can get one of them.
So I can have a pet. Another one.
Well, like I said, it's on Facebook. I put the guy's name on there. You can go watch it on here, Shannon Nayad or something like that. But go find the video. The clip is only like 7 seconds long, so that's all that's on Facebook. Anyway, Lynn, any final thoughts?
I think what you do is interesting. It just seems like it would be so cool. You know, I love walking through graveyards and looking at old headstones. I love it. And with my lineage, we go, you know, my mama's daddy's people were Edenfields from Edenfield, England. Bradfords come from Bradford. You know, these things to me are it's just interesting how you're able to find, like that there guy. You find him, you literally dig up his headstone, and it just interests me. You know, I'd like to see more of what you do.
Sure thing.
Yeah. We have plenty of stories we can always sit down and tell you, you know, and we can also tell you how to do it. It's not, I mean, I don't want to sell ourselves short, but it's not.
It's time consuming, but it's not.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of work, probably not hard work until you get to places like when my grandmother was researching her family, she'd find something, say, okay, we need to go. She went to Montgomery to look through documents there, and turns out that the place burned right after the documents got there. So then she went to Tallahassee to find the same information, and that one burned right after the documents got there. And I mean, she ran into that at about 4 different places.
Wow.
So, you know, stuff like that would give me a headache. I finally would say, you know what, forget this. They don't want me to know. You know, the universe is against me. But I just think that I think it's really cool what y'all do.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, Christine had to leave us. She had something come up. She had to go, but she did. She was just content to sit there and listen today.
I love her.
But we're going to be talking about her books in the next couple months. Do a strange author show on her and her books. But as we close this out today, I'm just going to let everybody know. I was looking for some stuff on my uncle at one point, And Andrea took some basic information, and I was going to show you what she dug up for me. This was my uncle, James Charles Slay. This is a Google Doc that she sent me. And he died in World War II. And this was the information that she sent me. His 128th Infantry Regiment, 32nd Division, the sleeve insignia, his draft card. This is the kind of stuff she found. And what is where he got wounded in a battle and died later. And she sent me pictures of all of these documents, the application for the headstone marker, the death notice, and the paper, and different things like that. So it was just some useful and unique information that she was able to find on my uncle that gave his life fighting for this country. So
it was an honor to find him. So
well, thank you. It's an honor to be his nephew, even though I never knew him. I knew his brothers. He had two brothers served with him that did not, that lived ripe old ages, and they served. The three of them served in World War II, and there was like 8 children. They're down to 2 now. My mom and her younger brother is all that's left of that family. So it's some great information to have. All right, guys. We hate to do it, but we have to come to a close at some point. So here we go. Okay, guys, remember in 2 weeks we will be back, and we're finally going to get into the mysterious booms. The show will be called It's All About the Boom Boom. These sound like sonic booms, but Air Force and all the Air Force and everybody denies that they had any flyovers. Why would they lie about it?
We get them here.
Right. Geologists say there's no tectonic or seismic movement, and we're going to be digging into that in 2 weeks. So join us. Thanks so much for being here. And remember, if you're in our Strange Friends group, give us about 5 or 10 minutes, and we're going to come on and open a room and live chat. So hopefully you can join us there for a few minutes. See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.